Hey there, welcome to the Eurostep, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast, proudly a part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network and GSPN, and presented by our pals at Prize Picks. If you missed out on the big game, we got a bunch of little games coming up. We have All-Star Game coming up, a lot of things, so check out the Prize Picks app today. I am Ty Windisch. I am not joined by Rohan Kadi, who couldn't take it anymore. I'm just kidding. Rohan's busy. He'll be back, but it would make sense. Maybe both things are true. I am joined by Justin Garcia at Justin Garcia NBA on Twitter and Blue Sky, part of the Bucks Radio Network and the Locked On Bucks podcast, where he talks a lot of Bucks all the time. We're going to talk even more Bucks today, whether he likes it or not. We've got Cam Thomas. We've got Ousmane Dieng debut. We can do probably as many minutes as he played talking about him on this show. It wouldn't be that hard. And we've got another Bucks loss, snapping their record this season, 3-game winning streak against the Orlando Magic, 118-99 in Orlando for this little baseball series. A lot to talk about, Justin. How's it going?
Oh, you know, it's the usual around here.
Yeah, it is. All right, so actually, it seemed like it was going to be a pretty good game in Orlando here. The Bucks were down 5 at the end of the first quarter, and then they led at halftime, They won the second quarter 32-24. Then the wheels really fell off in the second half. Felt like the turnovers, which also plagued the Bucks in the first quarter, came back. And the difference was Orlando just stopped missing every single three that those turnovers generated, which, part of that is when you're one of the worst shooting teams in the league, you're going to miss those. But they didn't really in the second half. They were 33% overall from three, but 47.6% in the second half. So pretty much everyone on their team hit a 3 or 2 in that half, and they just ran away, and the Bucks kind of rolled over and died. We talked about this a little bit before, Justin, but going into these games, it did feel like a turning point for the Bucks here of, okay, you beat 3 really bad teams last week, but you beat 3 in a row, which you hadn't done all year. It still matters. If you can beat Orlando twice, which is hard, but start off with a win here, and then you have a chance to, suddenly you might be in the play-in already or just outside of it, and now you've beaten an okay team without Giannis, and now, maybe this play-in run thing is real, right? Maybe something has been figured out, something has clicked, you have these great offensive games, and I kind of even at halftime, okay, they have a lead, like Orlando's fully healthy, Franz Wagner and maybe Mo are on minutes limits, but everyone in their team is playing. Their injury report was only Colin Castleton. So if you could do this without Giannis, this is actually really impressive. And then it wasn't really impressive in the second half. And we saw, I think, the Bucks were used to this year, where they just got ran out of the gym. Did you share my sentiment of maybe they're putting something together here? And did you factor any extra importance on this Orlando game, given they're not that far from the play-in, and they're also not that far from the 7th spot on Tankathon?
So did I reenact the meme and start to paint the clown makeup on my face this morning?
Yep.
Is what you're saying? Yes. I mean, I looked at the 3-game win streak. Obviously, it came against, you can't even say inferior competition, because that's what the Bucks are closer to than Orlando at this point, but it came against bad teams. But you did clean up a lot of the problems that have plagued the Bucks throughout the season. So I looked at that and said, look, you've got to start somewhere. They've done an okay job of protecting the ball. They've done a pretty good job on the offensive boards. They've been competitive throughout these games. I would like what I see so far. Let's see how it looks against better teams. And in the first half against Orlando, it was kind of the same thing. We're like, okay, there's definitely not playing great, but you're competitive and you're remaining in this game with them. It did feel like fool's gold, though. It was kind of like the check engine light came on in your car and you just ignored it. And then with 3 minutes left in the third quarter is when the engine finally exploded.
Smoke's coming through the hood. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Orlando in the first half was 4 of 21 on threes, and a lot of them were good looks that just weren't falling. Now, partially, you do always look at that and say, well, they're not going to shoot 19% for the game. At some point, those shots are going to start to fall at a higher volume. Orlando is still, the second worst three-point shooting team in the league? So whatever that volume they fall at, to be determined. It's not like I thought they'd shoot 50%, and yet here we are. But they started to do that. The turnovers and the offensive rebounds, points in the paint, like every single one of these categories, the Bucks got dominated in. That you were fortunate to be close and up at halftime if we kind of reverse engineer this and look at it. And that's ultimately been the problem with this team, that even when you start to build on some things here and the process looked better against 3 bad teams and it gave you the results that you wanted, ultimately what it boils down to, I think, is this, Ty. They are constantly losing the turnover battle. They're getting outscored in points off turnovers. Last night was, an all-timer for them, where they had 10 turnovers in each of the first 2 halves. First half, Orlando scored 6 off them. Second half, they scored 21. So you're outscored by 17 in points off turnovers. You're outscored better for the Bucks, but you're outscored by 3 in second chance points because of Orlando doubling you up on the offensive rebounds. And then stop me if you've heard this one before. You're outscored by 9 at the free throw line. So in a game you lose by 19 and we're hanging around, you lose those hustle and margin categories by 29 points, which has just been all too common for this team. And to me, I think it comes down to the number one stat. If you told me there was one reason why the Bucks sit here where they are at 21-30 on the season, it's true shooting. And, they put in the work in that 3-game win streak where, hey, they finally passed the Washington Wizards. They're no longer last in the league in the deficiency of true shot attempts. Well, after last night, they're basically tied with the Wizards for dead last once again. And that has just been a nightly occurrence. Last night, I think it was plus 11, basically, that the Magic were. On a nightly basis, the opponent is taking 4.5 more true shots than you are. It doesn't matter how good and how efficient your offense is. If that is what you're giving to other teams in a league where offensive efficiency is off the charts, you are going to lose more often than not, and that's what we've seen.
Yeah, and I think the answers from the Bucks just aren't good enough, and this is the one where, I've certainly been critical of Doc, will continue to be. We'll get to certain things throughout this game, but their roster is just not very well equipped for this, and I think you have seen the coaching staff try a lot of different configurations here. Like, I do think the Kuzma at the 4 lineups had some really great results offensively because the floor was just more spaced, but it was against some of these teams like Indiana, who is, Jay Huff, Micah Potter, big man rotation, is just not that much of a rebounding threat. Orlando and a lot of teams in the league are just going to be a lot more dangerous than that. Same like the Pels don't really have a stable of bigs. I mean, Misi, I think, has kind of been on the block. They don't really play Looney, who is a great rebounder, but he doesn't really have a spot there anymore. Really bizarre signing from the jump, but that's the Pelicans. The Bucks are one of those teams now too. So we've seen basically the answer has been Jericho Sims button, right? And more Portis, but really a ton of Sims, even with Turner, which basically one of those 2 guys is the 4, and that's not ideal defensively. Although I think Sims especially has done okay on the perimeter. He's still not a true 4. And even that, I don't think really has worked rebounding-wise. Again, he dominated, I think it was Indiana when he had 15 career high. He had 10 in the first half. That's great. That's good against Michael Potter. Like most NBA, if you're unaware, that's not a center. They're playing him at center. He's not a center. That's a 4. They just play at center because they have no players. That's not that instructive on how that configuration will rebound against most teams. And we saw that against Orlando. Sims had 6 boards, 1 offensive in almost 28 minutes, which isn't bad, but he certainly didn't dominate the game on the glass the way he was able to against Indiana. And I don't mean to make this all about Jericho Sims, but I just think they're very small. They play a lot of guards. We're back to AJ Green at the 3, which has not, I think, worked well. I don't know if they have any real options. I mean, we are now seeing the Nance, Sims, Portis groups. So I guess
you don't
Nance,
think Cam Thomas starting and swapping him out with one of the point guards and giving another 6'3", 6'4" player out there is the answer?
No, I don't. I don't. I would have liked. I've talked about, and I don't know if he would be interested. I would have loved if they took the swing on Highsmith, try to pitch him on, get healthy for half a year, and then play with Giannis, a better team next year. That's a real 3. Maybe Taurean Prince will get back. I know he's been doing on court. I think, unironically, like recovered from broken neck or whatever it was, a neck, Taurean Prince would be a godsend at this point. Not even a great rebounder, but at least a 3-size player. But they haven't found anything that works. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw Kuzma again at the 3 and one of the point guards get benched. I'm not sure which one they would do. KPJ was better. Last night, I think really the whole rest of the season should be about Ryan Rollins, but I don't know if the Bucks agree with me on that. I guess we'll see. But I just don't think these lineups with the 2-point guards, Green at the 3, are going to do it rebounding-wise. The guards are good rebounders, but not great. Green's just okay. And Turner's just not a great rebounder, which has really been something they've struggled with the whole year. But I just don't think they have good answers, frankly, for it without Giannis. That's the thing. When Giannis came back this last stretch, suddenly they were a good rebounding team again. It's like, oh yeah, that guy is, even when he's not going all out to box out, like he's just an incredible rebounder. That is one of the things that I think has been most felt with his absences this year. Obviously, the offense, the defense, I think honestly probably least just because he doesn't put as much energy there these days. It's the rebounding, where he with any of these bigs, they rebound really well. And any of these bigs without him, it just doesn't seem like they can handle physical teams.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? You said he's not really a 4. What do you think Jericho Sims, and I think this is the problem, there is no actual position that he truly is, but what do you think, where would you box him in positionally?
I think he's a 5, just with the limitations on him offensively. I actually do, and we've long talked about, I think a bench unit of he and Portis together, because I don't think Portis is a 5, despite the fact that they do play him there occasionally, where you just tell Portis, guard the least threatening forward on the other team and switch, and by God, don't drop or don't play a zone. I think that you do that, and then Sims either drops, or if you want to switch, he can switch too.
Yeah.
But I don't think, like him and Turner, to me, there's just not enough foot speed. And Turner, obviously, offensively doesn't have to play like a 5, but I just think it's going to be hard in those groups for them to really cover like teams that are actually working offensively. And then on the other end, it's kind of worked as they've gotten Sims at the rim more, but then you're really just marginalizing Turner even further and saying like, you are now Brook Lopez on offense, where you just stand there and maybe we swing it to you, maybe we don't. And increasingly they don't, because the guards have doubled down on the selfish thing from Giannis in these last couple of games. But that's how I see him. It's not, paramount of importance to me that he's in the exact right slot for him, but I don't like the he and Turner combo just on its face.
No, I don't. And like, look, because we've gotten this a lot too, when we've said for all the flashes that you will see from Jericho Sims, the struggle is like, oh, well, just lean into him more. Like, well, Giannis, when you're healthy, Giannis is going to play the most minutes on your team and be out there pretty frequently. And I just don't see the fit with these two alongside each other in terms of your spacing. Now, like, I get it if you're going to say, well, there's other teams that have leaned into physicality and they found a way to cobble together a decent offense. Like, okay, fine, but there's a lot of other variables out there too with physicality top to bottom. Like, if somebody tried to make the comp to me of like, look at what Houston's doing. Like, yeah, but Houston has one of the greatest shooters in the world on their team, and they're big everywhere else. We're like, this is our brand. We're just going to be big and physical 1 through 5. And that's how we're going to play offense. And that's how we're going to generate, because we're winning on the boards and we're just the tougher team. It doesn't work when it's just like 2 out of our 5 guys do this, but the others are finesse guys or they're smaller guys. And that's ultimately the problem with this construction. And I think we all knew it at the time of like, well, there's 2 things that really stand out about this team. Number one, what happens if Giannis misses time? And then also, who's going to be the small forward in this group? Like, at the time you had Taurean Prince, but like, I think every Bucks fan was kind of over that. Now they're seeing, oh, I guess Taurean Prince was better than we thought after all. But who's going to be the small forward with this group? And, I know I'm guilty of this. I did not think about that as critically as we should have, because that has really been one of the bigger issues with this team.
100%. And but I think one of the biggest that I think you hit on in that answer is like, we know Houston's identity. We know Oklahoma City, right? Like the swarming defense. That's their identity. I think we know the Knicks, which is kind of a weird one. It's kind of just like everyone watches Jalen Brunson, but then we have all these other talented players too. It's not a great. Hard
and we watch Jalen.
Yeah, it's not a great identity, but they have one. Detroit is basically just copy paste Houston without Durant. You have Cade instead, so it's a different look, but really physical, great defensive team. Literally will beat you up, as we saw last night. And then we have one guy who does all the offense. The Bucks, I don't think, have one. I think that's actually their biggest issue, is they would probably say we're a Giannis team, but like that's not, having a guy is not an identity. And I don't know what their identity is or should be, because Giannis, I think, I don't want to speak for him, feel free to come on the pod and clarify, Giannis, I think would like to be a defensive team. Maybe that was just they were winning, so he made him happy. But even like 30-13, that got a guy fired, they were an offensive team. Nobody seemed all that thrilled. When they were,
and the guy was hired for defense.
The guy was hired for defense, and it just didn't work. And I mean, the roster had a lot to do there. We don't have to relitigate that whole thing right now.
I mean, right? Like but also, what did you expect with defense when that was your backcourt? I think the big thing. Exactly.
And then even the next year, Doc's first full year, you didn't really fix that issue, which was kind of its own issue. But I don't know. I mean, I think it was like, Giannis and Dame, 2-man game. Okay, you didn't actually do it that much, so not really an identity. And now post Dame, I don't know what I would. I mean, I think probably most Bucks people around the team covering would laugh and be like losing or like not. But like seriously, I don't know how I would describe what they're like now without him. Maybe it's unfair, but even with Giannis, I don't know what I would say their identity. It was, I guess, just like Giannis do everything, but I don't like. So the Giannis Sims thing, I was thinking about this as you're talking. Like we've actually seen he's had a lot of success as the ball handler, like with Lopez or whatever in pick and rolls. Giannis. And they've done that less. They've wanted to do more out of the post and set him up there as a playmaker, which is not good for Sims because then there's just not space. And I guess their identity was like, we're going to post up Giannis and mostly stand around because they're not a great cutting team. I remember early in the season, there was that one game, I think maybe against Miami, where like Kuzma was cutting as Giannis posted and he found him like 3 times. It was like, they've unlocked something, and we never saw it again. It never happened a single other time. So I would ask you, what would you describe? It's a hard question. Like, what is the Bucks, like either what they intended to do, or certainly I think we know what they've become, which is just bad and really undefined. But I think that's, to me, been their biggest issue, and it has felt like ever since they got rid of Bud, there probably hasn't been a great answer, I don't think, on like, what are we built to do here? Besides, besides, keep Giannis happy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess their identity coming into the season, they would say, is we have who we think is the best player in the world. We have Giannis. And I talked about this a little bit last night on my show too. Like, I think we all underestimated the importance of a player that can play small forward, that can hold up at that position. Like, we're not even asking for anyone great. I'm like, well, these are your options, fine. Like, just go with the 3 guards because we had that sample size of 8 games that showed us these numbers were great. But we underestimated the importance of, it's a league that I don't know if I'd say they're going bigger as much as they're just not going small anymore. No. Like, that is not the way to play. So we underestimated that. And I think we also probably took for granted how to properly build around Giannis. Like, the talking points were always, look at what you've done to optimize this roster around Giannis. Like, okay, fine. But again, what happens when Giannis isn't playing? Like, how does this optimized for Giannis work when that piece is missing? And more importantly, I mean, that's just not the way they won before either. Like, they didn't win a championship by just surrounding Giannis with shooters. And I know there's been some debate over like, well, do you actually need a stretch 5 playing alongside Giannis? I still say yes. I think
certainly optimal. It's certainly optimal.
It doesn't hurt to have that. But, the way that they won when they were their most successful version of this group, it wasn't just Giannis and shooters. Like, it was Giannis and some shooting that was around him, but you had individual creators and guys that were perfectly fine with being background players, like Chris Middleton, who can run your offense, who can score in the half court, who is, we've both talked about, hit really the biggest shots during that playoff run. The importance of Chris Middleton, I think, can still get lost on some Bucks fans in having that player. Drew Holiday, same type of guy where you knew what you were getting defensively from him, and as a secondary or tertiary scorer, more so tertiary, he is great. He's excellent in that role to create on his own and just be that third option. I think what soured some fans too was the injuries. And when you were left with that series against the team that has just had your numbers, save for one series, it looked bad when it was Giannis and Drew Holiday. But like, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So the formula has always been, we need half-court creators. We need guys that can get their own shot and can be complementary of Giannis, but they're also two-way players, and we have the right amount of shooting around him. Not just like, well, Giannis is going to be a wrecking ball and they're shooting out there and we're just going to outscore teams. Like, who's the last team that won a championship doing that?
Yeah, I mean, the closest probably you could say Denver, but they obviously had a lot more going than that too. They had an elite second creator, and I think the player
and
you
their
didn't
defense
mention,
the second half was good.
Good enough.
It wasn't great. It was good.
And they had Aaron Gordon, and the Bucks had PJ Tucker, the guy you didn't mention, and the guy who they've done the worst job at replacing. They've never come close to that kind of. You talk about someone who didn't need shots. I mean, there's some games it looks like he didn't even want shots, much less need shots. But like, they threw him at Kevin Durant for 40 minutes. Like, they haven't had anyone who feels qualified. Or I would even say now, I mean, they have him now, but he's in the broadcast booth. Wesley Matthews, another player like that, who not as big, but that was a guy who, all right, maybe he'll shoot 3 times a game, but he's just going to be a dog, for lack of a better word. And they've never found that new guy who it's like, they thought maybe with Andre Jackson, but then they just stopped playing him because, we've seen the limitations. And I don't think he's as good as either of those guys defensively. But like, they haven't either had or played anyone like that. I mean, Shemi Ojale was the answer post Tucker. That obviously didn't work. Crowder had his moments, but I think the injury that last year just really threw him off, and he wasn't able to find it. Had a bad playoffs too.
He had that game against the Suns.
Yeah,
where he hit the corner three.
That was sweet. But that's been a huge issue too. Forget Chris and Drew. They don't even have the Tuckers, so now it's really just. They had Dame. I think Rollins and KPJ have been like your guards scoring to an extent, not as good. But the other stuff, they haven't even come close.
It's funny, too, with Wes, because that is one that doesn't get mentioned a lot, but it is worth pointing out. And it was either last year or the year prior, but one of the early on after the coaching changes that the Bulls were in town, and Billy Donovan was who, like, by the way, is one of, if not the best, one of the best coaches to listen to, just because of the answers that he'll give you and how open he is, and like, will honestly answer things and tell you, like, I can't believe he mentioned this. I remember there was one time when he was bluntly critical to the media in Milwaukee about, like, well, yeah, there's a lot of upside with Josh Giddey, but he's not doing this, and this. And we've had these conversations with him. You're like, man, I don't know many coaches that are actually being this honest with you. But he mentioned that when somebody asked him about, like, what's the biggest difference you see with this Bucks team now versus the group that, you played in the playoffs and that you saw for years. And he started with those two guys and said, honestly, we can talk a lot about the differences between Dame and Drew Holiday. They're both great players, but it's not just Drew. Like, nobody is mentioning Wesley Matthews and said he is a junkyard dog. And when you knew for at least 30 minutes, we're going to have to go against the backcourt that is Drew Holiday and Wesley Matthews, it's going to take a lot out of us to work for shots. And that's going to take away on the other end defensively, that these were the types of games you would circle and just say, okay, these aren't going to be fun, and we're going to have to be ready for X, Y, and Z. And maybe this guy that's been fringe of our rotation, he's going to have to play more because this is what it's going to take out of us.
Yeah, I think I was going to say us as watchers. I think the organization probably too took that concept for granted because I feel like there's this idea that you could just find these defensive guys. And at least for the Bucks, that has not been the case. I think this year's team, probably Gary Harris is the closest. Has had some really nice defensive moments, but even more limited offensively than Wes. Obviously not even the same conversation as Drew, and not a player that's a focus of their team at the moment. I think Rollins is a good defender, but we've seen that wane as, he's been asked to do a lot offensively. All right, we've got more to talk about. We've got Cam Thomas. I've got a rant coming up that I'm going to not ask Justin to participate in, but I have to do it. But first, a positive rant. Our friends at Prize Picks here on the show had a lot of fun on the big game. My Prize Picks play didn't win because I had less than a lowest punt number in terms of yards per punt. I thought punters are too good now, but one of the teams punted so many times that the guy had a bad punt. So my play lost, but I still had fun on Prize Picks tracking weird stats like that. Always have fun. It's so simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. You can pick from all your favorite sports, basketball, of course, but also hockey, which is in this big stretch run right now, UFC, college sports, which are heating up. And maybe if you're a fan of our team, you're watching more college basketball, trying to have a positive spin, download the Prize Picks app. You can pick more on, AJ Demansta points or Cameron Boozer rebounds. Those are a couple. And if you're talking about our team right now, I am always looking at AJ Green made threes. He slumped for a little bit, but he certainly seems back. And every so often they decide to funnel him shots again. So maybe it'll be that game. Also, I know Rohan loves the first 3 minutes plays. Honestly, I'm going to stay away for a while because they are starting slow lately. And if you don't score any points in the first 3 minutes, there's going to be no points. There's going to be no assists. Makes it a little tough. It makes it a little tough for those. But you can probably do even better than us. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code Eurostep to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code Eurostep to get $50 in lineups on Prize Picks after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Not right. So Eric Dame of The Athletic does a great job covering the Bucks. Shared this after the game, and I was winding down my night. I didn't plan to post anything else. I thought, excited to do this pod tomorrow. Just going to get a nice night of sleep after watching a really bad half of basketball. And then I see this, Bobby Portis, on how can the Bucks do a better job matching the Magic's physicality next game because they get him again tomorrow. So this very pertinent. And Portis says, I just think that you got to put a man on them, got to put a body on each man boxing out. This new NBA is different where teams are crashing 3-4 guys now, so this is like a gang rebound effort. This is all true so far. Can't be on, obviously, the bigs to rebound. Got to be 4 or 5 rebounds for everybody. Gang rebound and just get the ball out and run. I think sometimes we're at our best when we can get stops, get in transition, get transition threes, get downhill, get some easy scores. Also still true. Besides just taking it out each time and having to run a half-court set. Obviously, you want to do that in the playoffs, trend toward that. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Bob. But I think that it's kind of good to get stops and be able to get out and run and get easier looks for ourselves. So in this game, Bobby Portis had no rebounds, only 16 and a half minutes. Those things are probably related. Recorded 10 points on 6 shots and made both of his threes, and had a foul, and those were the only stats he accumulated. He checked into the game and immediately is put into an action, often happens, and gets caught in no man's land where he takes a step toward the driving player, who I don't remember, maybe Anthony Black, who I know had a couple offensive rebounds, but doesn't contest the shot, and then doesn't box out his man, which just described the importance of that, and the offensive rebound comes down, and he's standing kind of on the other side of the rim now for some reason, looking at the offensive player, doesn't get a hand up, and that shot then goes in, and that's 2 points for Orlando, and basically did the same thing on the next drive. I was frustrated about this and posted. Nathan Marzion posted the video of it, which I reshared. If you want to see exactly what I'm talking about, that video is on both of our Twitter pages. And that's bad enough that you do this, but then to say after the game, it's got to be a gang effort. It's not on the bigs. It does not entirely incorrect. It is, though, it's often, like, the bigs are the biggest part. Everyone has to do their part, but it's not as big. The bigs have to do their part. And then he was 7th in the team in minutes. Every player above him had 4, 5, or 6 rebounds, and he had none. Gary Harris also had none, but he doesn't accumulate stats. That's a personal choice, so I'm not going to hold that against him. He chooses to not statistic. I think that's fine. Just crazy to me, and he offers so much value shooting the basketball. He's going to be in the 3-point contest. That'll be fun to see. I don't know how many balls he's going to get off. I'm excited to see how it goes. I just couldn't with this quote, Justin, and I just can't with this anymore. And I think there should have been a trade. I know that it takes 2 to tango. All these things we've talked about with the identity and the physicality and everything else. Bobby Portis, I thank you for being the mayor and for the championship where you did close games. I think that we've got to move on. I think there's just got to be some more personnel changes for next season. You can go anywhere you want on this, but I am ready to get off of this ride, and I just don't think the way that they play anymore that he is necessarily the best fit, given the lack of the things that we talked about that they need, which is like defense and physicality and rebounding. I just don't think that Portis is bringing them the same value that he was when they were like the Drew Holiday team.
And to be clear, I mean, you are unleashing this personal attack on Bobby Portis on the man's 31st birthday.
Oh, am I really? So, I'm sorry. Jesus Christ.
What a
sorry,
gift.
Bob.
No, I mean, I think one of the more disappointing elements to it all is like by the numbers last year, I suppose at this point you would have to give strong consideration to it being the outlier year, but last year was I believe the first year in this iteration of the Bucks where the Giannis with Bobby numbers were much better than the Giannis with Brook Lopez numbers.
Yep.
And, you know, I think Brook Lopez certainly took quite a few bullets from Bucks fans, especially the last year, but the last couple of years, part of it is probably that age was starting to catch up with Brook. This year, that is, and I'm not even going to talk about the Giannis with Bobby numbers because there hasn't been a ton of it. But this year, the numbers have just regressed for the team with Bobby out there on the floor. I mean, their offensive rebounding rate is not great either way, but it was a 24% rate with him off the floor, 23.5% with him on the floor. Defensive rebounding, they're below 70% when he's on the floor, and I think it was like 72% when he's off the floor. So even by the numbers, if you look at it and say, well, Bobby Portis is going to give us energy and shooting and rebounding, that just hasn't been the case. And, you know, in those minutes that he's been off the floor, they've been net neutral at just under -1 point per 100 possessions. And with him on the floor, it's -8+. So it hasn't been pretty by the numbers. I think Bobby would be the first one to tell you that. But yeah, the tough part is a night where you look at his game log and you see, all right, 4 of 6. Fine. I still maintain, yes, Bobby's shooting better than 40% on threes. If that's the case, we need to see more than the attempts that he's getting. Like, those are the shots to hunt. I think he's done a better job of not eliminating, but cleaning up some of those like 2 feet inside the 3-point line shots and the turnaround over the right shoulder. He's still going to get that fine. But at this point, it needs to be a 3-point heavy shot diet that you're putting out there for us, because that's your value, is to be a stretch big that's going to knock down shots at a higher rate. Because, you know, the work on the glass, I mean, the team numbers speak for themselves right now, that they have not been good enough. They've been worse in terms of their defensive metrics and their rebounding numbers with him on the floor than off the floor. But 0 rebounds against the Magic. He had 6 in 26 minutes against the Pacers. And you just mentioned the lack of size that Indiana has. What Jericho Sims did, 6 rebounds against that group. We've just seen far too many of these game logs this season where it's been 2, 3, 4 rebounds. And you look at it and you say, well, even if it's 20 minutes, we need more than that. You know, we're putting you out there to stretch the floor and get rebounds. And we're getting one of the two, but not the other.
It's literally second all time in bench double-doubles, so not something that he's been unfamiliar with doing in relatively limited minutes, but not consistent enough. I actually think, outside of just the numbers, and you're right, I mean, the great irony of all these games where, Miles Turner is glued to the bench and Bobby closes for rebounding, the Bucks rebound significantly better in Turner's minutes, and, you could cry Giannis, and maybe that is the case. Turner has played with him more, but it's like 300 minutes difference, I'd say. 250 with Giannis and Bobby together, no Turner. 584 with Giannis and Turner. But that's not a ton of Miles' minutes with all the injuries. Turner's at almost 1,400. So they get 71.5% of the defensive rebounding of opportunities available with Turner on the floor. The only rotation player better is Sims. It's 0.1% better. So basically the same, 71.5 or 6 with those two. And with Bob, it's 67.8, which is one of the lower figures on the team, right there next to Kuzma, probably because they use that front court so often early in the season, and they just can't rebound at all. I think just putting the numbers aside, teams crash so much more now, and there's almost always an offensive player around the bucket. Bobby is a tapper. He doesn't usually just go up and get the rebound. He's not springy, and he doesn't have long arms. And it's just really risky in today's league to bobble at all because there are players lurking, even if it's not the big, guards and wings are always around looking for, can I either launch this off of him or just tip it and grab it? And it happens not all the time, but it does happen. Like the way Giannis rebounds versus the way Bobby rebounds, huge difference. Going up and just securing the ball versus this kind of prolonged, risky maneuver, that's been a big deal for them. I also think, to your point about the offense, and sorry, again, happy birthday, Bobby Portis, my bad. Some of it is just they're not a focused offensive team. I think this hurts Turner as well, of it's great to say he should shoot more threes. It's not fully up to him. And there's these possessions where, we're all just going to watch one of Porter Jr. or Rollins dribble. That might just not make a good shot. And often lately, it's just not generating a good shot for anyone on the team. So not totally it is great he's shooting 45% from three.
Well, and it's about twice as many possessions. But again, it's a pretty stark difference with, you mentioned the pairings. Giannis and Miles together with Bobby off the floor. So they're not playing jumbo. They're plus 9.1 in net rating. The offense is a 123.6. Defense is a 114.5, which is fine, right? But the offense is really good with those pairings. And they're rebounding at about a 73% rate on the defensive glass, only 25% that they're giving up to opponents on the offensive, or that they're getting offensive rebounding. With Bobby, they're plus 1.5 when it's Giannis and Bobby and no Miles. And the defense is near a 120. The offense is a 120. So they've been okay offensively and really bad defensively. And those numbers are in the 60% in defensive rebounding rate. Same as what they're getting on the offensive glass. So it's twice as many possessions that we've seen this, but it's a very big difference in the productivity you're getting with those two bigs versus Giannis and Bobby.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it's all entirely his fault. There are clearly things he's very good at on the NBA level. I think some of this for sure is, especially with these numbers that are just a collection of everything that's happened the whole season. I mean, the lineups they were trotting out early in the year, the Kuzma Portis front court, they were DOA. I mean, they're basically saying, we need Kuzma to be your rim protector, which maybe as a secondary or tertiary rim protector is good, not a primary, and they were too small. They weren't good enough offensively. Those lineups were extremely damaging to these players' stats. And then obviously, I've looked through this before. There's just very few lineup combos that have done anything without Giannis involved. And they've obviously had to play a lot with him, so that hurts everyone's numbers too. But I do think it is then instructive to say, okay, if when he's back, how do we maximize Giannis minutes? I do think Miles Turner and Giannis combo just needs to be a ton, because they are that, you just look at every single game pretty much they play in, that has been effective. Even if Turner has not had a good game, what he brings. He had another 5-block game last night, by the way. Not great offensively, but has really started to add more value on defense, I think. There's still a lot more there than they're getting. I know there's a lot of fans who want to give up on this, hate the move, hate the signing, whatever. I really want to see him in a more healthy system on both ends. I think there's still a really high-impact player there with Turner.
Yeah, I mean, if for no other reason, too, than the investment. But, right, we just got to lean into this. We signed Miles Turner to this contract, and, you kind of have to tack on Dame's stretch figure. Like, we're in on this, so let's just lean into this and see what we've got here.
That would make sense. Okay, we've got new Bucks. Ousmane Dieng was the first one. So trade deadline, really odd moves for the Bucks where I don't know where you fell, but we were clamoring like, get some added value here. If you want to retool around Giannis or if you're forced to rebuild, can we get 1 second-round pick on the coffers? Because they have basically none. Utah is top 55 protected this year. Spoiler alert, that may be mathematically over at this point. That's not happening. So can we get 1 second-round pick? They could not. They traded Amir Coffey, who it's so funny to me that expiring, like the contract value, had started for them. And they look good. It wasn't because of Amir Coffey necessarily, but he's just started 2 games in a row, and they won both and like immediately gone with Cole Anthony, who, a player who also I think the lack of organization offensively did not help him. They've just put too much on their guards the entire year, especially without Giannis, and that I think no one looked worse because of it than Cole Anthony.
We'll always have the Raptors game.
That literally the one high point of the whole tenure. I thought there would be games like that occasionally. It was pretty much just that one. So those 2 out. Nigel Hayes-Davis, who was immediately waived in, as well as at first Nick Richards, who I'm thinking like, okay, they're going to get a pick. Phoenix ducks the tax. They don't. It was reported out of Phoenix that the Suns sent cash, so kind of getting literally paid to help them duck the tax, which is low impact, doesn't affect the cap, just the Bucks get money. And then they swapped Richards for Ousmane Dieng, who was on the Bulls, but by way of the Thunder originally, who's 6'9", French forward, intriguing enough player. We talked about him last pod. We haven't really seen him much. He played 5 minutes in this game, got his first Bucks bucket. But do you have any expectation here, now that we're 2 games in, they got another player we'll talk about, forget making impact. Are we even going to see this guy regularly? Some of the excitement was, okay, a wing-sized player. There's not enough of those. Will he get a shot? The early answer has been no. He won't really get a shot.
Yeah, I didn't know what to make of it. On the surface, so just starting with what we initially thought the trade was, and we assumed Nick Richards was coming here, I think that set off everybody's spidey senses of Nick Richards is a fine player, and he's a free agent this summer, but you do get his bird rights in this, and it's cost controlled. So, okay, he's fine as a backup big, but you're not possibly going to carry 4 centers on this roster, are you? So what's the corresponding move? Do they have something else planned here? Because that was, 2-3 hours before the deadline came that move went through. And also, to your point, too, when you saw that, like, you're doing Phoenix a solid here. So what are the picks that you're getting back? Because my thought going into the deadline was you need to get picks. You need to either get picks or take on money and get both, right? And say, we have the only 2 true expiring contracts that they had on the roster you traded out for Ousmane Dieng, as it turns out. But we have that. We have some other guys that are 1+1s that it's not high volume of their money, that we'll trade this to help you out, and we'll take on double the salary, or we'll take on something close to that with the 150% rule. We'll take back more money if it's a young player we think there's something there in, and or if you're going to kick us some picks. But we have the flexibility to do that. So I did think that's what they were going to do, and I thought that is what they definitely should do, to either accumulate picks or just take on money and find talent, and maybe something pans out. The more we learned about that trade, the more I was more and more confused that there was no picks coming back to you to do that solid. That reporting makes sense that you mentioned the cash coming over. It's also, you could have just, like the Michael Scott line, we could have just paid for the pizzas. Like, well, you could have just given up a 2nd-round pick instead of here's cash, instead of us spending more cash. But look, my hearing from people in Oklahoma City like, oh, Ooze is great. You'll love him personally. He was a G League MVP and everything that you're pointing out, the size. Okay, yeah, there are some traits here. And hey, he was picked 11th in the 2022 draft, and he went one spot below Jalen Williams. So Thunder actually believed in him. Fine. My hesitation, and it's not about Ooze individually, with any of these guys, like when Oklahoma City says we're getting out of this business, for as good as their track record has been in finding and developing young talent, the ones that they say, okay, it's a tough decision, and we know about the situation the Thunder are going to run into eventually, where we're going to have to start to cut loose some of these guys. And I think that part of that was the Jared McCain trade too. With we'll give up a pick so we don't have to take this and get in the same spot. But when they're saying, yeah, we're going to have to make some tough decisions, you're one of them. I don't know what that means and how great I should feel about what there is to develop there. Now, he does fit a need, to your point of like, hey, everything we've heard too, he's got great length.
Yep.
I think he profiles much more as a defensive player than an offensive guy, even though like, oh, he's got a good looking shot and he can do this. But you have such a glaring need on the wing and a bigger wing, especially since our boy, the legend Chris Livingston, is gone. That I was kind of anticipating, okay, I don't think it's going to be like Ousmane Dieng is starting and going to play heavy minutes in that Pacers game, but like I would imagine we'll see him at some point, like in the second quarter for a few minutes and kind of gradually build it up. So the fact that we didn't see him Friday and we only saw him in garbage time. Now, maybe there is still this plan of we really want him, as we heard with Cam Thomas. He's got to learn the rotations. Maybe there is that with Ousmane Dieng, but it doesn't bode well that your first two games are a DNP and you're, 4 or 5 minutes in garbage time only in the second one when you joined a team that has no small forwards and is desperate for a bigger player on the wing that can actually defend and stay in front of guys.
Yeah, I think with Dieng, I think it's actually a good gamble if you actually use him at all.
Well, and also you got to pay him this summer too.
Yeah,
which was that's
why they really. So I think the optimist case. Yeah, you have to play him. The optimist case is, maybe he's coming along, but just too slow, and Oklahoma City got too good.
Yes.
And we all know like they're going to get expensive. Like they probably have to make tough calls on guys like Dort, Caruso, Hartenstein this summer with various options or just dumping Dort. It's easy for them to say like, all right, Dieng not even close to those guys right now. Like,
what did they ultimately get for him? Because he went to Charlotte, then Chicago, then the Bucks. It was like 3 separate trades, I want to say.
I think they paid, right?
That I would assume it was just cash consideraons.
Mason Plumlee.
Oh, even better. They got an impact player.
I think that's all they...
Yeah,
per NBA. No.
Right.
20 and 29 second from OKC. So they gave up a pick.
Was in that deal initially.
Yeah. So Oklahoma City gave up a 2029 pick to dump Dieng because he has 6 point something million this year.
Yes.
Which I don't think it's about this year for them as much as they need a roster spot for the McCain thing, as well as they're never going to pay him.
They could have a pretty good pick this summer too.
Yeah.
Then they're going to have to slot in and find another guy who's the odd man out.
I think they have potential of 3 in each of the next 2 years, which, they can't roster. Topic just played his first game. We'll see what they do with him. Sorber, the big, who may end up having to slot in for Hartenstein. We'll see what happens there. They have a lot going on. So the optimist case is like, hey, they played him a lot in the G League. Thanks for that. Like, he at least has not – like, I remember when they got Rollins, you look and it's like, oh, did he play a lot in the G League? No, not really. He just hasn't played at all. Like, he just needs to play. Yeah. Dieng has played there. He won the MVP. He was a big assist guy in the G League. A lot of turnovers too, but it's like, okay, they're working on something with him. He's trying to be like a facilitator, point forward, 6'9". He's still only 22 years old, which is kind of wild in year 4. And yes, he will hit restricted free agency. I can't imagine he will command much of a contract from anyone. He may not even have the qualifying offer extended. He has shown nothing. You're not tied to him. It doesn't necessarily have to cost you anything. But let's see. Can this guy, the thing that stood out to me from watching his NBA, his best moments, one of which was against the Bucks last season, He runs. He gets out and runs, and they don't have not enough players who do that. Like you'll see one of Rollins most often or KPJ. Rollins gets moving faster in those situations, and it's like, okay, it's Rollins and 3 defenders and no one else is around, and he's had some of his worst attempts there of like just trying to, in your brain, like, okay, this is semi-transition, I should go, but if there's no one else, then it's just a 1-on-2. It's hard. A running mate would be great in those spots. And let's just see. Maybe he can hit the threes. He's 0 for 2 in his first game. He's been low 30s at the NBA. Doesn't seem like a great shooter, but it looks okay. It's not a broken shot. Let's just see what he can do. I still think they should. I just think like this whole like tank or not tank thing has been a talking point. I think it's not really a conversation of like, what does the organization want to do? They have not showed any inclination for tanking this year. And I think some of that is just the Giannis part of it, but also like, they don't pull their guys in the fourth quarter. They don't ramp down minutes. They don't play the young guys that much more. Nance got his minutes cut in this last game, which was a shame. He's been one of their best players. So it's almost like they're trying not to tank, but it may be making them actually worse. Like, it's such a weird watching experience right now of like, what is the goal and what is happening and what are you trying to do? And I think Cam Thomas is the other big acquisition where 50 minutes in before I got to Cam Thomas, really weird first couple of minutes. Didn't shoot at all. He had 2 passes and no shots in his first 4 minutes, which very much felt like, okay, like let me be the good teammate. Let's feel things out. They played a very, I think, their zone looked different. Maybe it was just because he didn't know what was going on, but it didn't look good. Zone they played with him.
It was like kind of caught in between of there was a lot of ball pressure too. Playing zone.
Yeah, no one seemed fully comfortable with it. Orlando seemed comfortable, but the Bucks players didn't look good. And then his second stint was like close to the end of the game. He just starts shooting. He ends up 1 of 5, makes 2 free throws, 1 assist, 1 rebound, 1 turnover. I wasn't out on this signing. I know some people really hated it. He's 24. He has a clear NBA level skill, which is scoring.
Yes.
Maybe the change of scenery wakes something up in him. He has the tools to be an okay defender. He's 6'3" with a 6'7" wingspan. He has not been an okay defender in his career. And actually, like this is the comp I kept coming back to. He's been at 3.5 to 3.8 assists the last 2 years. More than Norm Powell, for example, has ever had. And Norm's a better shooter, but that's an all-star player who doesn't really defend, doesn't pass a whole lot. So I think there is room for a player who's just like almost all offense and shot making to work in the NBA. And I think the stink of the Nets has made Thomas look worse than he probably is. But also he did look like he wasn't a player who's going to add much besides just shot making, and he missed his shots, which has been the story of his season. So I think that the flyer is fine. We'll see how much he plays. That could be the issue. But what did you think about the Thomas addition and then his debut last night?
I mean, to your point, too, about I hesitate to call it playmaking, but the passing numbers, like Doc pointed that out, too, that we looked through and we saw he had some, I don't know how much looking through is nothing more than just, we looked at his game logs and Basketball Reference. Yeah, but like we saw a handful of like 9 assist and 7 assist games, so we do think there's some playmaking potential in there, and that's another thing that drew us to him. I frankly, whatever, like let it wash over me. I don't care. I think it's a very, very, very low risk move to bring him in for all the reasons that you mentioned. I frankly would trust Cam Thomas to be your microwave offense more than anyone else on this team in the minutes when Giannis is not on the floor. I think right now it's Kevin Porter Jr. that you would look at, who finished with 28 points last night. But I think Cam Thomas is more well equipped to take on that role than KPJ is. So yeah, I don't mind the signing at all. The question was always going to be, who is this going to be at the expense of? And my inclination was Gary Trent Jr., and the numbers bore that out last night, as we did not see him at all. And I am kind of curious to see too, like, what does it look like next to Giannis? Now, granted, I would much rather see AJ Green next to Giannis, and Cam Thomas is your sixth man that's scoring off the bench in those non-Giannis minutes. But we're going to see some Giannis with Cam Thomas minutes. The thing to me was, I agree that we've never gotten a sense that this organization is going to tank, quote unquote. But this move And then the soft reporting too of like Giannis is probably going to play in the All-Star game and he's going to be ready for that game, the 20th against the Pelicans, just hammers home. All right, they're going for it. And I think they're in the middle of the pack with strength of schedule remaining. Really, I don't know what you think, but the teams that I suppose I would look at, I mean, they're going to pass the Bulls. It's a matter of time with what the Bulls have built for their roster and what their intentions clearly are. They're tied in the loss column. They're only a game back in the loss column of Charlotte and Atlanta. And as of this moment, you've won your game against Atlanta. You have the tiebreaker against Charlotte. You're only 3 back of Miami, who's another team that has just kind of really started to sink these past couple of weeks. So, look, it's not unrealistic to say this team can really climb in the standings. It would have been even more interesting had you won that game, and especially if you won both of the games against Orlando. Like, all right, now we're talking of this team starting to build something against good teams as well. But they're going to go for it. So which of those teams that you look at right now, I think Philly is definitely safe from this conversation with a 7-game lead in the loss column. Orlando is probably there too. So if we're going to eliminate Chicago and we're saying Miami, Atlanta, Charlotte, and the Bucks, one of those teams is the odd team out. Which one is most likely to be that team? I mean, honestly, at this point, the numbers would tell you it's the Bucks, which is the interesting part to all of it, where maybe you have your cake and eat it too, in that we signed Cam Thomas. You mentioned too, Haywood Highsmith hasn't signed with anyone yet, has he? Like, no. I know the Bucks have long been linked to and interested in him, and we've seen this trend of guys that you see attached to the Bucks through the years all of a sudden end up with the Bucks here recently. Cam Thomas, another one of those. But I know the Warriors have been discussed there too. I mean, Haywood Highsmith is a player, to the points we just made about Ousmane Dieng, that definitely fits the need for the Bucks. And there's easy ways to create roster spots. So if we continue to see moves like that, who knows if you start to slowly but surely optimize this roster. But maybe it does end up being you have your cake and eat it too, where, look, we're going for it and we're trying to make the postseason, but we ultimately come up short and we're back in the lottery and we end up with a better pick here this summer.
Maybe the basketball gods smile upon that. Every other team except Sacramento, who just, I mean, good God. 13 in a row. I think maybe they've rested their guys in some of those games down the stretch, but they've also lost games where DeRozan plays and they're just worse than like Will
here's
Riley.
The challenge. I don't think Charlotte's going to finish on the 9-10 line. I think they'll get to 8, and then we're Orlando Charlotte for the 7-8 matchup. To me, is the most likely result there. So, I mean, like, this is the difficulty with the quote unquote going for it. Like, it's got to start now then, because you have to beat good teams, and it's a very home heavy schedule. I think it's 11 of 14 coming out of the All-Star break are at home, and one of those 3 road games is in Chicago, where you're going to have a stretch of basically 2 weeks that you get to sleep in your own bed, and the only time you're leaving Milwaukee is for a bus ride. But they're against playoff teams. Like, after the New Orleans game to open the second half, it's 4 home games, but it's 4 playoff teams that are on there, and then a 5-game homestand after that, and it's 4 of 5 playoff teams. So you're going to have to start to beat good teams consistently and not just in one-offs here. But the struggle for me is, I mean, it's one thing to talk about get into the play-in tournament and then who knows what happens. But at this point, it's not impossible. But I do think with a 6-game separation between you and Orlando in the loss column right now, and if you lose tomorrow, it's 7 and you lose the tiebreaker, so effectively 8. Like, your ceiling at this point is probably 8 where you can finish. And even that is starting to get tenuous, where it's moving closer and closer to best case scenarios. You get the 9 seed and like, look, you're alive for the postseason, but that is far from an ideal spot to be in, even if you have Giannis, and a big if, and he's healthy and clicking on all cylinders, because there's no margin for error. You got to win 2 games on the road to get into the postseason if you're 10, one at home, and then one on the road to get into the postseason if you're 9. So it's just like we've kind of tossed it around, Camille and I, for weeks now of like, well, you're going to have your answer soon. And something happens along the way of other teams get injuries or other teams go on these losing streaks. And the way the conference has been up until now where, it's been the Pistons, Celtics, and Knicks who've been the only teams consistently playing at a high level up until Cleveland has started to do this. There's always been these opportunities where it's like the Eastern Conference is trading off of, okay, it's your turn to win 6 in a row and go on this 7 out of 10 winning streak here. And it's been every team but the Bucks doing that. So like at some point you do start to get your answer of what the ceiling is for this team, even if other teams are keeping you in it. The fact that you haven't had one of these runs is pretty telling at this point.
Yeah, and I think that line, I agree with you, is probably starting at 7, especially if Orlando wins again. And I know and I follow the Sixth Man Show, a podcast on our network covering Orlando. They've been despondent. Like, it's not been a fun year for the Orlando Magic. But all along, like, the net rating with their 5 guys has been really good on, and they're right now healthy. And if they're healthy down the stretch, I think there's no way the Bucks catch them, even if they're not fully healthy down the stretch. Especially if they win this next one. But even if the Bucks win, I mean, would the tiebreaker then not be determined yet?
They still have 1 game left.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be undetermined.
So you're 5 back in the loss column, and you could still lose the tiebreaker. Like, it's not like you win that and you're like, oh, we have pole position.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, not just for the Bucks, but for every team. Like right now, that's a 3-game gap in the loss column. Them and Miami in 8. Meanwhile, Orlando is also 3 games out of 4, which is Cleveland right now. So that top 7, I think, is kind of pulling away. And then the Heat, who don't have real, I mean, I guess they would have incentive to lose. I think they have their pick, but I don't think they want to. That's not their thing. Atlanta doesn't have their pick.
1 through 4 is set, I think. We're just order to be determined, but nobody's jumping in. So the top 4 we currently have is going to stay the top 4.
Yeah, that's probably true. It's about with the Paul George thing, especially for Philly. Embiid looks really good. I don't think anyone would want to face them. Whoever ends up 3, if they end up 6, I don't think it's going to have a great time. But we'll see. They probably won't be healthy by then. Yeah, I know you're more on like the Bucks will for sure pass the Bulls soon. I think we'll see. I think they might hang around a little bit. I guess that head-to-head game is going to be really important for that in the next coming weeks. I just don't trust them to beat anybody right now, although they have beat Bulls-level teams, the new Bulls-level teams, now that they've kind of given up, and their whole roster is guards and Jalen Smith.
I think the big difference is I looked at it this morning, the Bucks and the Bulls and the Hawks. Like at this point, I'm not tracking the Hornets. I think the Hornets...
I was going to say, I mean, if it was 9-10, which it won't be, Hornets-Bucks, the Hornets are favored by, 9.5 in that game? I mean, they have been an elite team for like 2 months now. They started out awful, but they got healthy and got some continuity. That starting lineup is a juggernaut at the moment. Like, they would be favored by a lot in that game.
Yeah, I think Charlotte is going to, I mean, they're a half game back now after the win over the weekend. They're going to pass Atlanta here in the next week, probably. I looked at the Hawks, the Bulls, and the Bucks, and they each have 6 games remaining against the dregs of the league, like the Nets, the Wizards, the Pacers, the Pels, and the Kings, those types of teams, and the Jazz, especially with the ridiculousness that we're seeing from Utah in these tanks, despite what Austin Ainge said in the offseason. They each of those 3 have 6 games left against that grouping of teams. The Bucks are going to try to win those games. Whether or not they do, they're going to try. I just don't think the Bulls are going to try to win those games, and that's the big difference.
So here, I'll give you a point here. This is just the best. Tankathon calculates just strictly strength of schedule. Schedule, like which is the hardest. The Bulls have the 3rd hardest.
Yeah.
They have 2 against OKC, 2 against the Knicks, and they still have 1 against Detroit, San Antonio, Boston, Rockets. So they have only Oklahoma City and Denver have harder. They have one of the toughest schedules remaining. The Bucks are middle of the pack. They're 14th. They have 1 against pretty much every good team, but 2 against Boston. And then they have, as you mentioned, a bunch of these drag games, including both against Utah still left. Whereas
And
Chicago and
really
Utah must have played twice already. Wow. Ugh.
Yeah,
and Atlanta's 27th. Atlanta has an easy schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really don't think tough schedule is going to matter because, like, we've seen all of these teams are losing to those teams anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it's honestly looking at the easier games you have left, what's the volume of those? Because we're going to see two different method of operations here. The Bucks are going to try to win those games, and we've seen enough from Chicago to know they're not going to at this point. They're not going to try to win those games against the Utahs and the New Orleans that they have. It's also very jarring to go to Tankathon and see where they'll list your easiest opponents to see
I know the Bucks. I had the same reaction. Yeah. Anyone who has them left there, they're on the board. I mean, they're ninth pick right now, so they've been the ninth worst team in the league. I've been doing one spin per pod. Let's see where they land today. Oh, my sixth overall pick. The Milwaukee pick jumped to 2. New Orleans fell to 6. So that's a win. As weird as it sounds, I think you're probably have to do the same on your show, telling people its best case is the Bucks like winning the lottery or jumping at least and giving that pick away because it locks you into a top, whatever New Orleans is +4, which is probably going to be better than where the Bucks are.
Well, I mean, the best case is not winning the lottery.
The best case is what? Second in New Orleans wins, but functionally it's the same, right?
I mean, I guess I did one earlier today too, and it was what I think the Spurs. So the Hawks won the lottery.
Oh my God!
The Spurs got the number 1 pick. The Bucks came in second, so that goes to Atlanta, and then New Orleans ended up like 7th or 8th. Like, oh, great.
Yeah, those ones aren't ideal, but I just have to keep reminding myself we have not seen the Bucks pick in the top in the single digits since Jabari Parker, and it's a very good draft.
Yeah.
So
and what 10? Well, Thon Maker was 10.
10 years ago. Yeah, that's also their last lottery pick. So no lottery at all for 10 years. No top 10 since Don, and then inside top 10 was Jabari in 2014. So it has been quite a while since we're even close to this. But I do right now, I think top 7 feels really good in terms of the players, but haven't fully dove in yet. Anything in the top 7, though, I'd feel. Mikal Brown just had, 40? Everyone loves this Keaton Wagler. Caleb Wilson, the wing. Kingston Fleming's the big guard. And then obviously the top 3, if you're top 3 is really ideal, but that would take kind of a perfect spin for the Bucks at this point.
Yeah, I mean, my college basketball watching extends to just one team. So if you want any background information on the Arizona Wildcats, then I'm your guy. But
they're playing all the top guys, except Peterson didn't play them, right?
Yeah, Darren Peterson. I had the fortune of finishing the Bucks game last night, doing the post-game show, and then getting to watch the final 2 minutes of that heartbreaking loss while I was on the air with the post game. But yeah, I mean, if the Bucks end up with Koa Pete, that's not something I would be too stoked about for similar reasons that you went into with Bobby Portis.
Yeah. That's the one nice thing, I guess, about having such an undefined roster is I think any of the top prospects, like, sure, slot them in. They'll fit somewhere. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Orlando again Wednesday, also in Orlando. I think they're going to have a shot to win. It's whatever reason. I think it's hard to beat a team twice in a row like that. It just is in the NBA. But I don't know. The way the Bucks played that second half, I guess we'll see. Do you have any other pertinent Bucks thoughts or themes that we didn't hit across this pod where we talked about a bunch of stuff?
I mean, I do think it's more likely that they win than they lose by 19 again. If they do lose by, 19-20, then I think that's your answer for the rest of the season, honestly. Yeah. But no, I mean, it's just like, I think the number one thing to get across is what you mentioned of there's a chance that you're going to have a pretty decent lottery pick. In your best case scenarios, you end up with the second pick. The more realistic outcome is you're probably picking somewhere from 7 to 9, 7 to 10, somewhere in that range, which again is what this team has missed for a decade. And beyond that too, with what you ended up getting from Thon Maker, it's what this team has missed for quite some time is that type of injection of youth. And, the other thing is I did some other interviews last week too, where a lot of the the questions and the line of questioning was like, where do the Bucks go from here? Because, they're kind of strapped and there's nothing they can actually do this summer, which is just patently false. Like they can move 3 first-rounders. They could technically move parts of 4 if you add in pick swaps with that 32 pick. So they have a lot more that they can do this summer. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but there's more picks that they can trade. There's more clarity once we get through the lottery process and where you're picking and where other teams are picking. And like you guys have talked about this before too, they had to renounce all of those exceptions from a year ago to be a cap team and sign Miles Turner. So they do have the non-taxpayer mid-level. They do have a biannual to use. Those will cap you at the first apron, but they're not concerned at that point. Yeah, they've got room. So there are some things this team can do with flexibility this summer. Who those guys are is a different conversation because there are some names out there, but it's not like even Miles Turner. Like it's not like Miles Turner that you're looking at here for free agency. So it's really going to be winning on the margins and finding that next guy of like, this guy was underutilized and we'll give him a portion of the non-taxpayer mid-level and we think he can be a wing for us. Like those types of moves the Bucks can in fact make.
They can in theory. They need to actually start doing it. I don't know if the deadline and buyout market was a great example of that, but we'll see. I think there's some potential.
Financially, they can make those moves.
It's technically possible. You're entirely correct. And then the last game before the break then is Thursday, I think, back-to-back. So at the start of the year, I said this. Yeah, worst game of the year, number 1 game to skip is the second night of a back-to-back at OKC right before All-Star break.
Which honestly might be the spot to have Oklahoma City on the schedule. And
Shea won't play. Shea's been ruled out through it, right. But they have pretty much everyone else, I think.
Shea and is AJ Mitchell still out?
You're right. They don't have him. He was not playing in their last game, but I know Caruso's back, and then J-Dub just returned as well. Chet and Hartenstein both played. Hartenstein had been out. So, and I mean, they're so loaded that they still have a pretty loaded rotation without either of those guys. I don't know if Mitchell will play.
They're down 2 guys. They've still got 12 really good guys.
Yeah. Oh, man, we got to dig deep. And Aaron Wiggins, who the Bucks would kill to start at the 3, has to play 14 minutes for us. And
Are we sure about that?
What's he shooting this year? Maybe not kill.
I just mean with the overall construction of this group.
He's only 6'5". I thought he was a little bigger. 39% from 3.
Well then, now we're talking.
Now he's huge for the Bucks. Anyway, so yeah, we'll see. Orlando, OKC. I do think if you lose both, I don't know. I don't know if they'll actually change course. At some point, though, I think someone's just got to pull Giannis aside and be like, this ain't the year. And the awards thing is over. Like, you can play. You don't have to not play. This whole narrative ESPN went with of like, they're going to try and sit him down and lock him up, and this is going to be the thing. Like, really, they kowtow to him on every single decision and a couple points in the lottery at risk, and now's the point where they're going to draw the firm line with Giannis? I don't think so.
I don't want to relitigate the whole Giannis fiasco here, but yeah, like that was the thing that stood out to me the most too, is having conversations with people around the team and Eric and Jim, and they're reporting on it as well, to hear very much the opposite.
Yeah.
And then to continue to go with that too, of like, I mean, I'm not saying he does a bad job and not to single anybody out, but even Brian Windhorst like, well, we'll see about that.
It's terrible.
No, I mean, I don't think we'll see. I think we know, unless he's not ready on the 20th and this team is by then on a 3-game losing streak and lose to the Pelicans, like that type of thing is where, okay, let's think about this. But no, like we don't have to see. He's going to play this season for all there was another one last night of like, has Giannis played his last game in a Bucks uniform? Like, 0% chance.
Yeah. It'd have to be some crazy setback. That'd be the only way.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We'll see if it's the 20th or if it's a little later. I don't know, exactly. I guess we'll see it when we get there in the All-Star game thing. But, this idea that like, oh, they're going to shut him down. Like, one, they do whatever Giannis wants all the time. And I'm not saying he's a shadow GM, but like they listen to him and his word is the most important thing. There's just 0% shot. Doc was on the record before any of this stuff happened. Like, yeah, he's going to play again. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter. This idea that it's going to ruin their tank. They have 500 when he plays. It's way worse lately. Like, going into the last injury, they couldn't win with him at all. If they're, like, relatively careful with him, and he's been on a minutes restriction anyway, it's not going to, I mean, what, they're going to win it? Maybe they'll be 9th instead of 8th, 8th instead of 7th. Like, it's just not a factor at all versus like, we're going to ostracize Giannis after all this and all that we've given up. This is going to be the line. It was frankly just insane. They were on the record already saying they weren't going to do it. That to me was the one where like, maybe it comes up in the summer again. He seemed pretty excited. I think those picks are already on the trading block with Giannis's reaction after the deadline. But we'll see. But that whole thing, I was just like, this is actually the dumb ESPN stuff that people should be mad about. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to play, we'll play you.
Yeah.
But depending on where we're at, there may be some caveats that we're adding. We may have to add some wrinkles here. We may look at this and say, look, at this point, we're 4 games out of the 10 seed right now, that it is time to no longer play for the postseason. In that case, we're not going to shut you down, but we're going to build in like, okay, 2 games off in between this game that you play and things like that.
Yeah,
because by
no
the way,
back-to-backs.
Yeah, like assuming you're still with the Bucks, your calf is very important to monitor for us. And, even if we reach the point where we mutually agree it's in the best interest of both of us for you to no longer be on this team, you should be concerned about the health of your calf going into the situation next season as well. So, like,
it's a lose. Like every party, the other teams, Giannis, the Bucks, if something serious happens there. And that's the other, like, oh, he's not playing. Like, they're talking about these tanking teams. The Bucks are. He's got his 3rd calf strain in a year. Like, of course he's not playing right now, and he already played through the thing. Like, it's a very easy, I think, situation of just like, we're going to be careful with him. We're going to make sure he's right. Like, clearly no reason to rush him back, and the 65 games thing is out, which I think that was a factor too. But anyway, just a manufactured thing that hopefully will go away whenever he suits up. Maybe this month. I keep saying this or next month. I guess it sure seems like it's going to be this month. But I think it's fine. Play the home games. Don't play back-to-backs. Don't play on it if you tweak it again, please. But otherwise, I don't think I posted last night. I think we can scratch off winning too many games off the Bucks problems list. I don't think that's going to be one that really bites them. I think they'd be happy about it anyway.
Well, I mean, they're 14-14 in games that he has not left with an injury and played in the full thing. I think it's 15-15 or 15
because they beat Detroit and they lost, I think, the other one.
So they're 500.
Yeah,
and I mean, if you get that, the duration of the season, you're the 8th seed right now, and you're within striking distance of the 7 and potentially moving into the 6. It's a much different conversation. Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see when we see him. We'll see what he looks like. Hopefully everyone's just very careful for all the reasons we've outlined. But that's all we've got for this one. So thank you very much, Justin, for joining me. Everyone, please go follow him, again, on Twitter and Blue Sky at Justin Garcia NBA. Check out his work on the Bucks Radio Network. As he mentioned, post-game, during the game, all sorts of great stuff there. And as well as Locked On Bucks, where a lot of episodes talking about the Milwaukee Bucks, of course, every single news item. Whenever we're not going to record for a while, something breaks, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see what Justin and Camille and or Frank had to say about this one first. So check that out. Go subscribe there wherever you're listening. Please also subscribe to us wherever you're listening and or watching. If it's on YouTube, give us 5 stars, put the notification bell on, rate, review, all the fun stuff. Thanks again. Thanks again to Prize Picks, our lovely sponsor, Pod Random, and we will talk to you next time.